Hello friends, I'm Rob, this is Digital Wastrel, and in this video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get started playing a Badzone Enforcers gang for NECROMUNDA. The Badzone Enforcers are kind of like the regular Enforcers if they locked themselves out of their house and they had to live in their garden. Welcome! This video aims to be a complete guide to starting a Badzone Enforcer gang, so if you're new to NECROMUNDA or just new to the faction, you should find this useful. I've made quite a few similar videos, so be sure to check out my channel if you're more interested in like Goliaths or Vansar or whoever. My previous video was a guide to the Palanite Enforcers, and there is obviously a lot of overlap between that gang and this one in various different ways. But I will be assuming that you didn't watch that and you're new to the channel, so this video should be standalone. I will include timestamps in the description, so if you want to jump around to the parts that are most interesting, please go ahead. I will also note that as of recording this, the new NECROMUNDA rulebook is up for pre-order. I don't have it yet, but from previews, I'm fairly certain that none of the changes will affect this guide or any of the ones that I've done. So with all that said, what is in this video? Well, I'm going to start off with an overview of the gang, talking about how to build a Badzone Enforcers gang, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and a little bit about their playstyle. Then I'm going to talk about the weapons and war gear that's available to them. I'm going to go over some strong choices and some narrative choices. Narrative choices are basically weapons that are maybe not so strong or not so efficient, but you just want to take them because you like the look of them or you like the flavor of them. Yeah, and then I'm going to look at some skills. I'm going to give some suggestions for some good choices that you can take, and I'm also going to go through the Enforcer's unique skill set called the Palanite Drill in detail. I'll go through each and every skill and rate them, tell you whether they're good or bad. From there, I'm going to move on to some roster building advice. So firstly, I'm going to tell you some general things to keep in mind when you're making your roster, just some kind of general principles to abide by when creating a gang. Then I'm going to go through each of the fighter types and give you some suggestions for some loadouts that you can equip them with. And then I'm also going to give you some advice about what to do after your first few games. So obviously NECROMUNDA is a game that shines in a campaign setting. You know, you build your gang, you get some income, you buy some more stuff, but all of this can be a little bit overwhelming if you're new, and so I will give you some suggestions for how to build out your gang after you start getting some games under your belt. Next, I'm going to talk about some hobby tips. So these are things to know when physically building your gang, like what's on the sprues, what weapons you want, and I'll also give a few ideas about kit bashes that you can do. And finally, I'll round the video off with 4 example starting gang lists. I'll start with a generalist gang, just an all-rounder kind of decent gang, hopefully. And then I'm going to give you 2 gimmick gangs, which are just built around some weird ideas that I had. And then finally my personal starting gang, which is just the one, the way that I would play them if I was going to play them. Who are the Badzone Enforcers? I'm glad you asked. The Badzone Enforcers are a new type of Enforcer gang that was released via White Dwarf. I mean, I say new, you can see the asterisk up there. Yeah, the White Dwarf came out about a year ago. I think it was like summer 2022. So they are slightly more modern than the Palanite Enforcers. Yeah, but, you know, new is a state of mind, I suppose. In terms of narrative, they represent enforcers that were cut off from their usual resources, and they're a bit more scrappy and slapdash than their more stricter Palanite brethren. Yeah, basically they kind of represent the enforcers that are in precincts that are, you know, maybe don't get so much budget or kind of forgotten about by the paperwork, or you know, just in a unimportant zone, so they don't get the reinforcements and they don't get the nice equipment, so they have to kind of make do with what they've got. So they've got a nice kind of bit more of a grimy feel to them than the regular Palanites. despite the name, they can be used in any type of game, not just Badzone games. So if you're not aware, Badzone games were released by Games Workshop. They released these kind of Badzone tiles. I don't know if they've been out of print for ages, but Badzone tiles and Badzone games were basically an alternate way of playing Necromunda, where the environment was much more hostile. So the Badzone tiles had like man-eating plants and acid lakes and all that kind of stuff all over them. But yeah, Badzone Enforcers can be played in any type of game. It's just the name. You can even play them in Ash Wastes if you want to. They have the same stats and skills as regular Enforcers, but they have some different weapon options. So it doesn't sound that different, but the different weapon options really open up what you can do with this gang. And the other big thing in terms of list building is that they can take scum. So yeah, this is really cool. The scum basically represent deputized hired guns that the Enforcers have kind of, persuaded to join them. And in terms of gameplay, they kind of work as your Juve type fighter, which is pretty cool. And yeah, as I mentioned before, they're about a year old, so they are much more of a modern list than regular Enforcers. And if you watched my previous video, you might remember that the regular Enforcers are quite janky. Like the way the list is written isn't really the same as modern gangs, so there's a bit of weirdness to the regular Enforcers, and the Badzone Enforcers are a bit more modern, so that's good, less janky in that way. However, big however, they are a White Dwarf article, so they are a lot more janky in different ways. Yeah, so I know Necromunda isn't famous for having tightly written rules. It's always a bit open to interpretation, and add on the fact that this is like a White Dwarf article, so who knows how much balancing or playtesting or editing went into the actual gang. So, be prepared to roll your sleeves up, talk to your fellow players, and figure out some of the weirdness that might come from the lists. But yeah, they're a good fun gang, and I think you might enjoy them. So if you want to build a Badzone gang, what do you need? Firstly, you will need a copy of White Dwarf 477, which is June 2022, as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure that all of the White Dwarfs have the same number. I feel like when I was a kid, like the UK and the American White Dwarfs had different numbers or something, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's universal now. I think there's a World Eater on the cover from my research, has gathered that vital clue for you. But yeah, anyway, so if you don't have access to White Dwarf 477, then I think Warhammer Plus gives you access to like the Vault, which has a bunch of old White Dwarves in them, so you can probably get it that way. If you do not have Warhammer Plus and you do not have a physical copy of White Dwarf 477, you'll have to find the rules somewhere else. You're smart, you can figure it out, ask around on the usual places, and there are various fan-made compilations that will probably get you what you need to know. But yeah, it hasn't been reprinted in any physical rulebook as far as I'm aware. And in terms of models, you're going to want to get yourself an Enforcer Patrol gang box, which is the one with the 10 guys in it. You might also want to get yourself a Subjugator Patrol gang box. The Subjugators are the slightly bigger guys with shields and some other weapon options. In a regular Palanite gang, Enforcers and Subjugators are like two completely different classes of fighter, but in this gang everything's a bit more mixed up, so Subjugators are not essential, maybe recommended. The other thing you'll definitely want is a box of Hive Scum. The box, I believe, comes with 4 guys, and that should be enough to do you for the whole gang, at least at the start. And then you'll also want to get yourself some extra weapon bits to take advantage of the Badzone Enforcer's different armory. I'll go into which bits you probably want to take later in the hobby section. But yeah, for now, you'll know that you'll probably need to raid a bits box or similar to equip your dudes. And in terms of like exotic beasts and brutes and stuff, Badzone Enforcers get access to the hacked Cybermastiff. And the hacked Cybermastiff's rules are found in the Book of Judgment. The hacked Cybermastiff isn't very good, so you probably don't really need to know the rules for it. But if you do want to use one, then the rules are in the Book of Judgment. The Enforcer Automata. Yeah, this is the big square police robot that came out a few months ago. So yeah, the Automata was released after the Badzone Enforcer list came out. I'm unsure if it is officially available to them. From what I could tell, I think rules as written, Badzone Enforcers cannot take the Enforcer Automata. But I think they should be allowed to, because it's cool, and I basically believe in allowing more things than banning. But yeah, basically what I'm saying here is that you should talk to your arbitrator, talk to your group before you spend any money purchasing a box of Enforcer Automata, because I'm not your arbitrator, so I can't really be the judge of whether they are allowed in your gang or not. However, if you are going to use the Automata, their rules can be found in the Eranthian Succession, The Vaults of Temenos, which is one of the campaign books that came out fairly recently. And yeah, unlike the hacked Cybermastiff, I would definitely recommend the Automata. It's really cool, the rules are good. Yeah, who doesn't love a huge big police robot? Right. So when you're building your list, your gang will consist of a single leader who is called a Palanite Captain. You'll also want any number of champions, which are called Palanite Sergeants. And this is basically the first difference between the Palanite Enforcers and the Badzone Enforcers. Yeah, first improvement is that you do not have a cap on the amount of champions you can take in your gang. So off to a good start already. And you need at least one ganger rank fighter for every captain and sergeant that you have. And the ganger rank fighters are called your Palanite patrolmen. And you're also able to take any number of enlisted hive scum. But please note that these are not ganger rank, so make sure that you have enough patrolmen first. And also, from what I could tell, you don't get access to any ganger specialists at the start at gang creation. So yeah, you can only get specialists by leveling up mid-campaign. Yeah, so basically, you have your leader, you have, let's say 2 champions. That means that you need to buy at least 3 patrolmen, and then after that, you can start adding in scum or more patrolmen. Yeah, and each of your Enforcer characters comes with an armoured undersuit and magnacles as part of their cost. So again, this is a difference from the Palanite list, because you do not get any, quotation marks, free armour or free stub guns. So obviously, nothing's free. Yeah, the Palanite list, they paid more for their guys because they had the armour and the stub guns built in. So yeah, your Enforcers are mildly cheaper. I think someone did the numbers, and probably you're still paying a little bit more. So if you buy a Palanite patrolman in a Badzone gang, and you buy the appropriate amount of armor and a stub gun, you're probably paying slightly more than the equivalent Palanite Enforcer guy. But obviously, if you just want to equip everyone with the exact same things that the regular Palanites come with, then you should probably just play the Palanite gang. The advantage to the Badzones is that you have the flexibility. You don't have to buy stub guns for everyone. You don't have to buy armor for everyone. You have that flexibility, which is always good. And then all of your scum level fighters come with nothing. They just show up and they're just bodies, and you are then up to you what you buy for them. And yeah, also please note that because the weapons are mostly based on the options in the physical boxes, Scum and Enforcers have quite different choices available to them. So again, I was using one of the community resource documents to figure out how Badzone Enforcers work. So I haven't seen the actual physical White Dwarf article, so I don't know whether the White Dwarf article was laid out in a more easy to understand manner. But yeah, there's this weirdo table telling you which weapons the Scum can have and which weapons the Enforcers can have, and it's very it's a bit difficult to pass if you're not paying attention. So yeah, there's a bit of a weird disconnect between which weapons each of your fighters can have. And yeah, how do they play? So Badzone Enforcers basically have the same stats and skills as regular Enforcers. Yeah, good and bad. You're looking at the same basic dudes. They no longer come with armor and stub guns as standard. But yeah, they do still have the undersuits and magnicles, though. Magnicles ain't bad, you know, they come for free, so that's good. And armored undersuits are also excellent. You know, Vansar love a good armored undersuit, and yeah, everyone having at least some armor save is excellent. And yeah, they have a few different weapon options and less restrictive gang creation rules when it comes to the Enforcer / Subjugator unit type. So again, if you've watched my previous video, you'll know that the Palanite Enforcer gang has very strict rules about how many subjugators you have to take and how many enforcers you have to take based on who your leader is. But in the bad zones, it's a free-for-all. You just buy your guy and then you buy them a shield. If you want to, you buy them bigger armor if you want to, or you don't. There's no divide at all between these two. Yeah, so that's excellent. No more worrying about that. One of the biggest downsides to the Badzone gang, however, is that your Enforcer bolt guns, your combat shotguns, and your concussion carbines gain the scarce rule when they're taken by your patrolmen. So yeah, scarce is not very good. Scarce means that if you go out of ammo during the game, you are unable to reload, which is obviously pretty bad. However, you still do get the Enforcer bolt gun, so all of these weapons do have a 4-up ammo save. So yeah, it's up to you to decide how much that bothers you. So with your deputized Scum, they work almost the same as Juve type fighters. Scum do not trigger nerve checks from other Enforcers when they go down. This is basically the same as the hot-headed rule, which prospects, the unique Juve types, have for the house gangs. Scum cannot be part of a group activation. Yeah, this is a pretty bad one. It really means that Scum are supporting fighters. They're not going to be part of the main team. If you want primarily a Scum gang, then you pretty much want to be looking at the Outlaw gang for that. But you know, Scum, you can have a few Scum hanging out, doing a bit of side work. Another thing is that Scum do not have the fast learner ability, but they promote to a ganger type after 5 promotions. So yeah, again, very similar to Juves. And overall, it's not 100% clear how they spend XP, but from looking around, most people online seem to agree that it's best to spend XP as if they were Juves, which means you go through and you choose which upgrades you take and you spend the XP appropriately. Then after you've bought 5 of these upgrades, you get promoted to a ganger type or ganger specialist type. But yeah, it's not 100% clear because you're looking at a White Dwarf article. Therefore, talk to your arbitrator / fellow players. Yeah, here's another downside to the bad zones. They no longer get access to the hard case Cybermastiff. Instead, they get access to the awful hacked Cybermastiff. So narratively, I think this works. This makes a lot of sense. The hard case Cybermastiff is obviously a big, difficult to maintain robot dog, and instead they have to get, you know, some black market hardwired robo-dog that fell off the back of a truck. Narratively, it makes perfect sense, but the hacked Cybermassive is really bad, so that's a bit sad in terms of rules. So, what are the strengths of playing a Badzone gang? Badzone Enforcers have a good range of very nice weapons. They have good armor saves, and all around they have much more flexibility than their stricter counterparts. So if you like the look of Enforcer gangs, but you want to mix things up and be a bit more freewheeling in how you build your guys, Badzone's the guys for you. They have average stats all around, but they have good gear, and that makes you a close-range shooting gang. You also have quite a bit of tankiness, and you have some control elements. Yeah, so pretty much all your guys are going to have armored undersuits, so you're going to have quite a lot of saving throws, but you are going to have pretty poor or average ballistic skill, so you really need to get up close and get those close range bonuses so you can make sure you hit people. Scum give you access to cheap bodies as well as decent or at least average close combat ability by taking the chainswords and/or flails. Yeah, love a good Scum with a chainsword. He doesn't cost a lot of credits, and he's not the best fighter in the world, but you can't underestimate a Scum with a chainsword. 2 or 3 of them, they'll do some work. Big positive for playing the Badzones is that web guns and plasma pistols are on the house list. This is excellent stuff. Narratively, web guns make a lot of sense. So I'm pretty sure that each and every policeman makes it his personal goal to capture as many people as possible and put them into jail. And therefore, web guns are the perfect way to do that. So it's excellent to see them on the list. And plasma pistols, I don't know what plasma pistols do in terms of police narrative, but you know, they're very, very good guns and they're excellent. So good stuff all around. Yeah, you have less restrictive subjugator rules, so it makes it much easier to make a big, tanky, close combat guy with a shield. And I'm pretty sure that big, tanky riot shield man is at least 60% of the reason why people want to play Enforcers. The other 40%, of course, is doing Judge Dredd quotes from across the table. You get access to cheaper ranged weapon access in the form of auto guns and las guns. Gives you a lot more flexibility for your grunt level guys. So yeah, this is excellent. One of the problems that regular Enforcers had was that they didn't really have access to any good, cheap weapons for their basic dudes. So you ended up really struggling with spending credits. But now you have access to fairly cheap weapons, so this is excellent for filling out those last few credits and getting an extra guy on the battlefield. And same as regular Enforcers, you have access to some very, very good skill trees, specifically shooting and cunning, which are 2 of the best, I think. What about the weaknesses of a Badzone gang? Even without as much compulsory equipment as the regular Enforcers, your guys are still all pretty expensive for what you get. Yeah, and what you get is trashy stat lines all around. Yeah, Badzone champions are better than regular Enforcer sergeants because of the improved weapon list, but they still have mediocre stats and only 1 attack. They are not the worst in the game, but they are far from the best. I would say probably they're the 3rd worst champion type in the game. Number 1 is, of course, still Genestealer Cult champions, who are just 1 wound. Come on. They need a 2nd wound. Hashtag give Genestealer Cult champions 2 wounds, please. Yeah, they're the only gang in the game, except for regular Enforcers, without access to leadership skills. Yeah, it's just a bit of a weird one. I suppose the Palanite drill skill set kind of represents how they work. But yeah, no leadership skill is a bit of a weird one. White Dwarf Article gang, so as mentioned before, expect some unclear sections and jankiness. Be prepared to discuss with your group how things work, and yeah, this goes for all of Necromunda, but this gang especially. I would recommend, rolling up your sleeves and doing a bit of house ruling if something works in the way that you don't really want it to, or you don't think it should, because Necromunda is a sandbox and you get out of it what you put into it, which is cool models, hopefully. And no specialists at the start really limits your special weapon access, especially compared to regular enforcers. This is one area where the regular enforcer gang really outpaces the bad zones, because the regular enforcers could basically take special weapons on all of their guys, which really gave them some nice options, but you're really limited in that front. And patrolmen, gangers gain the scarce rule on enforcer bolt guns, combat shotguns, and concussion carbines. Yeah, I don't know what the math says about the likelihood of going out of ammo on these weapons, but for me it's worth the trade-off, but you may feel differently. I feel like there hasn't been a lot of times in my games where I've gone out of ammo and it's ruined the game. It's bad, but it kind of gives you a new narrative way. When your guy goes out of ammo with his main gun and he's just got to fight off the enemy with, just his fists or whatever, it's not an ideal situation, but it leads to some good stories. So for me, I quite like that. But you may feel differently, and that's up to you to decide, obviously. Special mechanics with the bad zones. So enlisted hive scum. This gives the Badzone Enforcer list a kind of juve option. Scum cannot benefit from group activations or the lead by example ability. Scum have the hot-headed rule, which mean that if they go down, nobody cares, or specifically no nerve checks for friends mid-battle. People maybe they care, maybe your guys are gonna shed some tears in the between game phase of the campaign, but there are no rules for it, so that's up to you to decide how much they actually care. You spend XP and you get promoted to a ganger type after 5 advances, and you have no fast learner ability, so you don't get those discounts on consecutive stat increases, which most other Juve types have. Almost a Juve, but not quite. Badzone Enforcers gain and hold territory the same as normal gangs in a Dominion campaign. This is pretty good. Dominion campaign is the basic type of campaign that almost everybody is going to play at some point during their Necromunda career. Pros and cons of playing a Dominion campaign aside, it is the most common one. So Badzone Enforcers being able to play the game the same as everyone else is excellent. They do gain the unique Enforcer Precinct territory instead of a settlement, which is very similar, but you don't have a chance to recruit any free Juves, sadly. You have less reliable guns, and you have fewer special weapons than regular Enforcers, but in exchange you get a higher degree of flexibility, you have more options, and I think the cool modelling option of bringing deputized scum along gives you so many cool possibilities. So I don't think either gang is strictly superior in terms of rules or power level or whatever you want to say, but I expect that one flavour of Enforcer, the Palanites or the Bad Zones, will probably have jumped out at you at this point, and you'll probably have a feel for which flavour you want to play. Weapons and Wargear. Let's have a look at some of the strong choices that are available to your Palanites. We're going to start off with the stub gun. Yeah, I love a good stub gun. If you watched any of my other guides, you'll probably be familiar with my love of stub guns. You pay 5 credits, you get +2 to hit at close range, and that's all you need to be an excellent weapon, in my opinion. So these are no longer free, they no longer come as part of your equipment compared to the Palanites. If you have a scarce weapon, definitely consider bringing one of these along as backup. Excellent stuff. Enforcer bolt guns. These are the same as regular bolt guns that everyone else gets, but they are slightly cheaper, about 5 credits cheaper than everyone else's, I think. And they give you a 4-up ammo roll instead of the 6-up, which regular bolt guns have. But they do have scarce if they are used by a ganger patrolman. So personally, I think this is a great trade-off. However, if you do take these, make sure to bring a backup weapon. Sniper rifles. Sniper rifles are cheap, cheerful, and they give you a touch of rending. The value will increase if you mostly play on 3D boards, but even if you mostly play on 2D, like tunnel fighting type boards, they're still good weapons because they're not heavy, they're not unwieldy, so you can move and shoot with them. So yeah, sniper rifles are very good. Power Maul. This finally gives you a kind of very solid close combat option for your enforcers. So yeah, if you want to rumble up close with your captain, definitely consider a Power Maul. Adding an assault shield finally gives you a kind of really solid close combat threat that the enforcers were kind of struggling to reach, but this is expensive. However, it is imposing as hell and it'll look cool, so that's obviously the most important thing, right? Plasma pistol. So these are only available to captains and sergeants, but they are fantastic. Yeah, plasma pistol, again, good short range bonus to hit, good AP, good strength, good damage. Yeah, excellent stuff. And the web gun, yeah, now we're talking. So there are other gangs out there that have access to web, but you have access to infiltrate and also hip shooting, and both of these you have combined with high armor values. So this means that you can really make your web gun guy a stubborn threat instead of like a glass cannon that most other gangs have to use. And finally, you have mesh armor. So again, if you watched my previous Enforcer video, you might remember quite a lengthy section where I listed out all the different types of flak and hardened flak and layered hardened flak and what they do. Basically, for bad zones, forget all that. You get access to them, but it's not worth it. Just buy mesh. Yeah, just buy mesh for 15 credits and get a 4-up save. Because, yeah, don't forget that your armoured undersuits are stackable with regular armour. So, yeah, 15 credits, mesh armour, 4-up save. That's all you need. Excellent. And for Scum, what kind of weapons are good for Scum? Chainswords and flails. So you are still only weapon skill 4-up with 1 attack base. But these make you cheap enough to pose a minor threat in close combat and support a tougher close combat style captain. Flail is probably better in terms of like numbers and efficiency, but you gotta agree that chainswords are much cooler. And if you want more of a shooty Scum, las guns. Yeah, this is probably the other main loadout for Scum, or the actual main loadout, depending on how you feel about it. 15 credits, they have a nice short range bonus to hit. They have a very reliable ammo roll. You definitely want to bring a few of these along to do some laser shooting. Excellent. How about some unique choices? Yeah, Magnicals. So these are really good, but seeing as they're free Wargear on all your guys, it's not really worth like rating them, saying whether they're good or bad or not, because you have them, may as well use them. So yeah, the way they work is that you roll to hit in close combat, and then the target has to make an initiative check to avoid. If they fail, then they get cuffed. Once they're cuffed, that means that they cannot move, they cannot shoot, and they take a -2 penalty to close combat attacks. They have to make a strength check to escape. So yeah, this is great for locking down Goliaths or other big guys with low initiative. It's not going to be your primary method of dealing with enemy gangers, but now and again it's going to be super useful, and it's going to be a useful tool to have in your arsenal. Enforcer shotguns and concussion carbines. So these are both relatively cheap, and they're template or blast ammo types. They kind of counteract the fact that your gang has a poor ballistic skill stat all around. Becoming scarce is really rough when you take them on your gangers though, and the fact that you can't take special weapons on basic gangers until they get promoted is also a really big limiting factor. They're not terrible, they're definitely not terrible, but they're not the auto-include that they were in a regular Enforcers gang. And then finally, grenade launchers. So yeah, less restrictive equipment rules means that these are no longer limited to only being taken by the pricey subjugators. On the flip side though, you have less access to special weapons throughout the whole gang, and you have no access to more ammo types on the house list. So yeah, this feels to me like a weapon you'll probably pick up a bit later in the campaign when you have a few more bodies. Yeah, they're fine, but you know, grenade launchers in my mind are like the excellent specialist weapon, like the third one that you give to your specialist type ganger. But yeah, with only 2 special weapon slots, grenade launchers are not the auto-include that they are in other situations. On to the narrative choices. So what do I mean by narrative choices? Yeah, I could have called this, you know, bad weapons or inefficient weapons or never take these weapons. But I prefer to describe these as narrative choices because, you know, sometimes you just want to take the inefficient option because it looks cool. And the idea behind this section is that if you know some weapons are more narrative and some weapons are more efficient, then hopefully you can balance your gang with some strong weapons and some, you know, less strong weapons, and then hopefully you get the nice flavor of your gang and the personalization while still having a chance to actually win some games, because no matter how casual you are, if you just get your ass kicked in absolutely every game, it's really dispiriting. So, you know, you want to put up a fight, but you still want to take some stuff that's cool, and that's what this section is all about. So with all of that said, there are no completely awful choices in Necromunda. There's always going to be some situation that some weapon will be useful in. Though big shout out to the two-handed hammer, the two-handed axe, and the maul, which are basically trash. If you've watched any other Necromunda Tactics video, or if you've read any Necromunda Tactics articles, which you probably have, then yeah, you'll probably at some point have heard the person describing these weapons as trash. And if you're not sure why, I'll tell you real quick. Two-handed hammer and two-handed axe give you a minus to hit in close combat. This is bad because you want to actually hit things in close combat. And the maul is one of the few weapons in the game that gives a bonus to the opponent's armor as opposed to taking it away. So yeah, these are bad. Don't take these weapons. Heavy stubbers. In my opinion, the heavy stubber is one of the most hard done by weapons, considering its status as the kind of classic Necromunda heavy weapon. I played as a kid in the 90s Necromunda, and the heavy stubber was always the kind of default starting heavy weapon, so it's got real flavor and history to it. But in modern Necromunda, the question you always ask yourself is, why would I pay 130 credits when I could pay 160 and get a heavy bolter? And the heavy bolter is just that much more useful. It is cool as hell though, and it is nice that the enforcers do get the heavy stubber on the house list. So flamers in general are too expensive, and weirdly they're only available to specialists. Yeah, ignore flamers. If you want to set people on fire, there are better gangs for that, such as Cawdor. Auto guns, yeah. Getting cheaper auto guns on enforcers is neat, and it is a good way to kind of fill out your patrolman roster if you need some, you know, cheap ganger type guys. But generally speaking, if you want a cheap guy with a medium range weapon, a scum with the las gun is going to be better and cheaper. But there is some appeal in just having a basic policeman with a machine gun. So, you know, concussion ram and assault ram. These are the kind of huge breaking down door looking things from the subjugator's kit. Neither of them are awful, but they basically both fall into the category of being too expensive for what they do. And yeah, this is doubly damning in an already pricey gang. There's just a lot of really nice stuff to spend your credits on. And yeah, you don't have that many kind of slots for fancy weapons. So if you want to take one of these because you think they look cool, I think they'll probably do work for you, but they're just not not top tier. You just got much better options. And yeah, the hacked Cybermastiff. The hacked Cybermastiff has 1 attack, no save, chance every turn to go insane. Very sad to say, but he is a bad dog. Onto the skills. We've got the Palanite Captain, who is your leader. He has access to Brawn skills, Palanite Drill skills, and shooting. And the Palanite Sergeant, who is your champion, and he has access to Cunning, Palanite Drill, and shooting skills. Captains have got quite a few options available to them. If you want to go with some Brawn skills, Bull Charge or Crushing Blow might be quite useful if you want to get stuck in with a Riot Shield charge. If you really want to do the kind of shock close combat charge, these can help you out there. Threat Response is nice because your captain is the best close combat fighter in your gang. Hip Shooting or Fast Shot are both quite nice if you're going with a more shooty captain. Yeah, there's a lot of good things that you can give to your captain. I feel like probably it's better to figure out what you're doing with your champions first, and then kind of build your captain to support the champions. Speaking of champions, your Palanite Sergeants get access to Cunning. They're the only fighter type in your gang who do. Infiltrate has really high potential for causing trouble, but it can get your guy isolated and taken out by the enemy quite easily, which might not be great for a relatively low model count gang anyway. Some of this is going to depend on the boards that you play on and how good you are at setting up deployment. Personally, I'm always pretty poor at the deployment phase of games, so Infiltrate hasn't traditionally worked so well for me when I've used it, but yeah, it can potentially be really nasty. Overwatch is another great choice, and it goes really well with sniper rifles. This works both narratively and mechanically, because you got your police sniper looking through the barrel of a sniper rifle, waiting for someone to step out of cover and give them the old sniping. Palanite Drill is the Enforcer's unique skill set that only they get access to. So let's go through each of the 6 skills real quick, and I'll give you a little take on them. So let's start with Got Your 6. This means that you can interrupt a charging enemy with a shooting attack. This is kind of like a situational Overwatch. The important thing though is that it doesn't remove the shooter's ready token, which actually makes it pretty huge. Helmore's Justice. So this means that you can roll twice on the injury chart when you take an enemy out of action, and you can choose which one you want when doing a coup de grace. This doesn't directly help you. It doesn't help your gang get any stronger or give you any really any more options, but it does make your opponent enjoy the game less. I would basically suggest avoiding this completely unless you're like very sure of the vibes of your group. If you're playing like if you're in a group where you really enjoy, making each other's lives miserable, and fair play if you are, maybe it's alright. But generally speaking, I'd say this is bad, and it's not good. Speaking of bad skills, non-verbal communication. Yeah, you can make a double action to potentially increase a friendly fighter's vision arc to 360 degrees. Gaining a 360 vision arc may have some niche uses, and I'm sure someone in the comments down below might be able to suggest some niche uses for a 360 vision arc, but whatever they are, it's in no way worth giving up a skill slot and spending a double action to maybe pull it off. Yeah, bad skill, don't take. Restraint protocols. You can use a restrain action instead of a coup de grace. Get a bonus to see if you capture enemies at the end of the game during the wrap-up phase. So capturing enemies is fun and thematic, but I'd say this skill isn't super useful. Very much a narrative thing. Yeah, it depends how much you enjoy playing rescue missions, I suppose. Teamwork. So you can group activate an additional fighter than you usually could. So champions can group activate with 2 and leaders can group activate with 3. So yeah, this is not bad considering you don't have access to regular leadership skills, because this basically works the same as commanding presence. And threat response. You can interrupt an enemy charge with your own charge. So yeah, this can be quite nice to keep the enemy away from your shooty fighters. But do keep in mind that this skill needs and uses a ready marker, unlike Got Your 6. So from all of these ones, I would say Got Your 6 and Teamwork are probably the two most useful one. Threat response isn't bad, especially if you want to go with a big fighty character, if you can make such a character. And yeah, the rest are all probably ones to avoid. General roster advice. So here are some notes and suggestions for things to think about when you are building or writing your roster. First up, I would aim for a starting gang of around 8 to 9 fighters for a Badzone gang. Basically, if you have too few fighters on the board, you're going to be easily swarmed by more numerous gangs, and any injuries or deaths you suffer will really mess you up for the next game. So yeah, 8 to 9 fighters is probably a good place to start. I would recommend taking Mesh for your important characters and Nudity for everyone else. Armor does not come as standard on the Badzones, unlike the regular Palanites, so it's probably a good idea to save some credits at the start. I would recommend buying Mesh for your leaders and champions, but I think your officers and patrolmen can basically survive their first few games just with undersuits, and then you can always upgrade them with more armor later. Gear up your leader and your champions and then support them with the rest of the gang. So if you have a close combat leader, you can maybe get some flail scum to follow him into combat. You can get some cheap las guns to provide covering fire. And then if you have snipers or heavy weapons, you might want some close range shotguns to kind of run interference as the enemy tries to get close to you. On to some loadout suggestions, and let's start with the captain. So your Enforcer captain is your only fighter with weapon skill 3+ and 2 attacks. That makes him a great candidate for some close combat weapons. Mesh and an assault shield will make you really hard to put down, but close combat weapon and pistol is probably better. Yeah, and here's some suggestions for some ways that you can potentially equip your captain. First up is what I'm calling the close support build. So a power maul, a plasma pistol, and the Got Your 6 skill. So the idea with this one is you want to move up with some close range web champions or flail scum and protect them from charges with some well aimed plasma pistol shots. Next up, the John Woo build. Yeah, so 2 plasma pistols and the gunfighter skill. You pick up hip shooting at some point as well, which is going to be really, really useful for you. Bonus points though if you go prone with your second action, and extra bonus points if you bring a pet dove to the game. Yeah, don't actually do this. I mean, I haven't actually watched a John Woo movie in quite a while. I assume that the majority of them still feature people like jumping on the floor in slow motion and doves flying around. That's what that was about. Finally, we've got the Enforcer bolt gun build, in which you take an Enforcer bolt gun and then maybe Teamwork or Fast Shot or the Got Your 6 skill. It's not very exciting, but it will get the job done. The job in this case being to hang out with your buddies and shoot you with a bolt gun. Yeah, don't be afraid to just give them a bolt gun. Bolt guns are very, very good. And yeah, you will enjoy having a bolt gun to shoot at people. So the Enforcer Sergeant's loadout ideas. You got weapon skill 4 up and ballistic skill 4 up and only 1 attack. So yeah, bad times for that. You do have 2 wounds though. You're basically just taking these guys for their skills and their special weapons, so make sure they have a purpose. Here are some suggested builds for them. Ho ho ho, now I have a machine gun. For this one, you want to take a heavy stubber and the infiltrate skill. So yeah, I mostly wrote this down for the hilarious meme potential. But the idea is that you use infiltrate to set up in a good firing position, and then you murder people with a heavy stubber. A more efficient version of this build would probably involve taking a sniper rifle instead. Next up, we've got the aggressive subduer build. So this is, we take a web gun, an assault shield, mesh armor, and the infiltrate skill. So yeah, other gangs can do the infiltrate using a nasty weapon trick quite well. However, you can do it with a 3-up save. Yeah, mesh armor and the assault shield gives you a 3-up save from the front. So yeah, the other good point about this is that the assault shield has knockback. So you can try and keep people out of engagement range. If someone charges you, hopefully you can knock them back out of combat using the shield, and then give them a good webbing. If you actually want to use this build in games, I would suggest it might be worth starting without the shield though, because it's going to be really expensive. As for patrolmen, even with scarce, I think bolt guns are still great. Don't forget to bring a backup weapon though. This will probably be your default loadout. Combat shotguns are also okay, but again, scarce can be rough. You could go shield and shock stave for close combat support, but it is expensive. If you really want like a big gang of heavily armored toughs to roll around with your captain, then it might be something that you could make work. Auto guns are also an option if you need some super cheap patrolmen to balance out your champions. If you're going with like super expensive champions, this might be something to look for. On to the scum. And yeah, you're going to want at least a couple of scum with las guns in most lists, I think. We're not about spamming, taking the most efficient option and buying it as many times as possible here in the old digital wastrel realm. But yeah, a couple of scum with las guns will basically do a lot of work for you, so they come recommended. Stub gun and flail, or stub gun and chainsword, can be an option if you need some close combat assistance. Yeah, scum are not going to be able to take out anyone who's good at close combat, but with the numbers and the bonus to hit from these weapons, you're going to do some damage and you're gonna slow people down. So yeah, I quite like that loadout. Personally, I would rather take an enforcer with a scarce combat shotgun over a scum with a regular shotgun. But if you want a more reliable shotgun, it's not a bad build, and obviously it is a lot cheaper. On to the brutes, beasts, and hangers-on. Yeah, so I mentioned this at the start of the video, but I don't think sanctional automata are allowed for Badzone's rules as written, but I personally think they should be. Mostly just because it's cool and it's a unique model just for enforcers, and yeah, why shouldn't Badzones be allowed to play with as many toys as they want, basically? But narratively speaking, they don't have the ability to have enough ammo for their bolt guns, so maybe it makes sense that they don't have enough robot parts to keep their sanctional automata running around. But yeah, as ever, I am not your arbitrator. Very unlikely that I'm going to be playing Necromunda with you, so therefore talk to your group and see what they have to say about this. If you do decide to allow automata to be played, the rules can be found in the Aranthian Succession of Odds of Demonos, which is one of the campaign books that came out recently. They have a good base price with a good selection of gear, and they have useful skills and abilities as standard. So yeah, the automata are really nice. They have the automated repair systems ability, which means that you automatically stand up after taking a seriously injured result in the recovery step, which is excellent. Very, very good. It means that the enemy's really going to want to get close to you and do coup de grace to make sure you go out of action. And then, up close and personal is where you like it, because you presumably have other guys with shotguns and bolt guns and stuff to give them a bad time. And the mobile bulwark ability means that you give heavy cover to any friends who are hiding behind the automata. Again, this is excellent. You move up with the robot, your guys with bolt guns hang behind it and take shots out. It's very cool, the narrative and the rules support it, which is the perfect combination. In terms of upgrades, the concussion cannon is very, very good, but it's also very, very expensive. Now, personally, I'm of the opinion that by the time you'll reach the point that you're buying brutes, it's probably, you're already spending like 200 plus credits on a brute. What's another, however many more to get the really fancy gun? But it is very expensive. Heavy carapace, on the other hand, isn't that expensive, and the upgrade is probably worth taking because, you want to keep this thing alive as much as possible. And if you're not using the automata, then the usual Ogryn and Ambot options are also available. Ambot is probably the best generic brute, so definitely take that one if you're looking for a big stompy robot. Ogryn are fine, they're not amazing, but I know a lot of people really like the idea of Ogryn with police helmets on, and they definitely have a nice flavour to them. So, they're both fine. Ambots are great. Ogryn are average. In terms of beasts, the regular enforcers get access to the hard case cyber mastiffs, which are pretty good. Badzones do not. You get access to the hacked cyber mastiffs instead. These are pretty bad, sadly. They just don't really do much. They have like a slight chance of staying alive a little bit longer. They got a slight toughness based skill, but they don't have many attacks. They don't have any like fun abilities really. Yeah, they don't really do anything. Very sad. As a noted dog lover, I am disappointed with that. Enforcers have access to no unique hangers-on, but you can take any of the usual selection of generics. And despite the fact that they're Badzone Enforcers and they're kind of, scrappy and hiring scum and stuff, they are still a law-abiding gang. You're not an outlaw gang. So you do have access to, like, all the generic law-abiding hangers-on. And they're spread throughout all the books. Like, pretty much every book, every Necromunda book out there probably has some hangers-on that you have access to. Most of them are bad, but some are good. Anyway, the ones you want to have a look at are probably the ammo jack, which is the first time I've said those words in any of these guides. Yeah, one of your biggest weaknesses is scarce on your basic weapons, and ammo jacks give you a little bit of help with failed ammo rolls. So yeah, might be good to get. And rogue docs, of course, are always a good choice. You don't want to die, basically, so keep your guys alive with a nice trip to the doctor. And after you've played your first game, what should you do? First up, get more bodies. I would recommend trying to expand your gang until you have something like a 12-strong roster. You basically want to give yourself enough bodies to survive a bad game and still be able to go into the next one with a strong roster. Basically, the worst thing to avoid in Necromunda is the so-called death spiral. What that means is you have a bad game, you roll badly on the injury charts, some of your guys get taken out. Next game, most of your gang is dead or in recovery, so obviously you field like the 3 guys that are still standing, and you get your ass kicked in that game as well. So then you've gone two games without winning, without getting much income, and then you're still struggling to replace the guys that died, and you keep losing games. And yeah, that's basically a bad experience. So to avoid that, you want to get a big enough roster to be able to power through like one bad game, because one bad game will happen to all of us sooner or later. And yeah, 12 probably is enough to deal with that. Next up, get some more protection. Yeah, make use of those armored undersuits and start getting mesh for your team. I wouldn't jump out and start spending 15 credits on each and every body in your team immediately. Probably it should be like a process. After you've played a game or two, you should get the hang of figuring out which one of your guys are gonna be taking armor saves and which one of them are not. Like, maybe you've got a dude with a sniper rifle and he rarely gets targeted, in which case probably he doesn't need the mesh quite that soon. Or maybe he does. Maybe you're playing a lot of people who really hate snipers and really target him. Sergeants are your only source of special weapons, so I'd recommend getting a few more of them and then try to get some more XP on your gangs and scum. Don't forget though, if you do buy some more sergeants, you still have to keep the ratio of patrolmen to sergeants and leaders intact. So yeah, if you buy a sergeant, don't forget to take the appropriate numbers of patrolmen as well. Heavy bolters are a very nice trading post choice if you want something heavy but you don't want to buy the heavy stubber. And yeah, buying an ammo jack is probably a good early buy if you start finding that scarce is a problem for you. Rogue docks are also always a useful investment early on in campaigns before you start taking too many casualties. You know, ideally you buy a rogue dock and then you never really have to use them, but once your leader takes a headshot, and you'll be glad you've got a rogue dock hanging around to look after him. But yeah, all of this advice is not completely exhaustive. There are going to be some options that I've missed, and the most important thing is to have fun. I was talking about the death spiral earlier and the 12 strong gang and all that kind of stuff. If that doesn't seem fun to you, don't worry about it. You know, if you want to just have a small team of dudes and just roll with it, just roll with it. You know, the story is what you make it, so do whatever you think is the most fun. Don't let some guy on the internet tell you what to do. But if you do let some guy on the internet tell you what to do, then like and subscribe and all that stuff. Right, on to the hobby tips. Here are some things to know about building an Enforcer gang. So yeah, the Enforcer patrol box comes with a very good selection of weapons that you'll use. Probably all of the weapons in the Enforcer patrol box will get used by you. It's a very, very good box. One of the best boxes that you can get in terms of weapon selections, I'd say. Power mauls can probably be represented by the shock stave part. No one's going to notice and no one's going to care. The guy on the thumbnail is my Badzone Enforcer captain. He's got a shock maul he's got a power maul and a plasma pistol, and the physical model part is like a shock maul. But yeah, I challenge anyone worth playing against to notice the difference, basically. Yeah, so with no formal distinction in the list between Power Knights and Subjugators, you want to consider if you actually want or need the Subjugator box. Subjugators are physically a little bit bigger than regular Enforcers, but generally speaking, people don't really care that much about the armor on the model, because obviously it's a physical model. You can't like add armor to it. And you've got all the Escher with their bare midriff that presumably some of them have mesh armor and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of up to you if you actually want to use the Subjugators or not. Assault shields I think are very, very cool, but they're probably not like super strong and super useful. I think you can probably play the gang quite easily without using any assault shields. And if you don't really want to use assault shields, maybe you don't need the Subjugator box at all. But yeah, that's for you to decide. The main weapons that you're going to want to source that are not on the official sprues are web guns, plasma pistols, and possibly heavy stubbers. I'd recommend making friends with a Gene Stealer Cult player for the first two, because they have access to quite a few web guns. And your local Orlock player should have some spare stubbers. And the Orlock heavy stubbers are nice and modular. They're quite easy to glue onto other figures, so that's good. Yeah, if you don't have a good bits box yourself and you don't know anyone who has other bits that you can trade for, and you want to just buy them, I'd recommend maybe having a look at the Delac weapons upgrade kit. That comes with some web guns, some plasma pistols, maybe some sniper rifles, and las guns might be quite useful as well. So yeah, if you want to just go out and buy the bits, then that one might be one to look at. In terms of converting your actual enforcers, capes are kind of the universal shorthand for a rugged survivalist. I don't know why that's true, but it is. I did spend about 30 minutes to an hour the other day attempting to find an image of the Colonel from Akira after the big explosion. Spoilers in the manga, where he's like going around, he's got like the walking stick and like the big old cape, and he's like the kind of post-apocalyptic badass. But it turns out there's not any good panels for that, or I would have, stuck them in the video. Anyway, yeah, capes. There's not that many good caped bodies that I can really recommend without doing like extensive cutting and repositioning. I mean, there's lots of stuff that you can try, but no like easy hacks that I can suggest for you right now. If you want to try making them yourself, green stuff and / or aluminum foil are possibilities. Again, I'm not a green stuff master. I quite enjoy the old bit of converting, but I'm not skilled enough to give you good advice. But there are plenty of people out there that are very good at sculpting and do sculpting tutorials on YouTube. The first one that comes to mind is probably Modern Synthesist, who has a YouTube channel, and he mostly does Tyranid stuff, but he does like basics of how to use green stuff. So, do some practicing. And yeah, this next point is my kit basher's instinct kicking in. I have no logical reason to believe this is true, and I obviously haven't played with the kits yet. While I'm making this video, the Cities of Sigmar range refresh has not been released. They've been teasing some images. They all look really cool. And yeah, my kit basher's instinct tells me that the Cities of Sigmar range might have some good bits to kit bash with some enforcers to make some interesting looking figures. And yeah, Games Workshop, if you're watching, send me some Cities of Sigmar guys and I'll turn them into space cops for you, I suppose. Finally, for scum conversions, because yeah, if you're having scum in the gang, you might want them to look a little bit more enforcery. Try using a spare enforcer helmet on scum bodies. You can see this is a little example of this that I knocked up shortly before recording this video. Yeah, it gives a kind of a scrappy but somewhat uniformed look. Yeah, those are my hobby tips. Finally, on to everybody's favourite part of the video, I assume. If it's not your favourite part of the video, why not let me know what your favourite part of the video is down below? Engagement, algorithm, etc, etc. Anyway, it's the example starting gangs. So usually in my guides, I begin with a one box, what you see is what you get gang list. However, this is kind of a slightly weirdo gang list. It's like a White Dwarf side list. So I think if you want to build like a one box, what you see is what you get Palanite gang, I would recommend going with the basic Palanite Enforcers. So yeah, I'm not including a one box list for this one, but I am going to give you four example lists, and we're going to start with a generalist gang. So we're going to start with a Palanite captain who has got a plasma pistol and a shock stave and mesh armor. And he's got the teamwork skill that lets him activate an extra guy. And then we got a Palanite sergeant who's got an enforcer shotgun, a stub gun, mesh armor, and got your 6. And a Palanite sergeant who's got a stub gun, a grenade launcher, mesh armor, and the fast shot skill. And then we've got 3 Palanite Patrolmen, each with a bolt gun and stub gun. Stub gun, obviously, because the bolt guns are scarce, so, you know, backup weapon. And then we got 3 scum with las guns. So yeah, this is a little bit more spammy than my usual lists that I prefer, but with the scarce rule, 3 of them means that you have some redundancy. Even if 1 or 2 of them go out of ammo, you'll still have some nice bolt gunny punch. And you got your captain with the plasma pistol, who should be able to deal with a little bit more heavily armored fellas. The grenade launcher can hopefully use fast shot to drop multiple pie plates on people. And then Enforcer shotgun guy can use Got Your 6 to drop that nice teardrop template on anyone who gets too close to your dudes. And yeah, then the 3 scum with las guns. They're cheap, they're cheerful, but yeah, las guns, they will pin people, and then that's what you want. And that is 9 bodies and 1,000 credits total. Next up, we've got a list which I am calling the Shock Assault Gang. So for this one, we've got a Subjugator Captain who has got a Shock Stave, an Assault Shield, and Mesh Armor, and he's got the Teamwork skill. Then we got a Palanite Sergeant who's got the Web Gun, an Assault Shield, and the Mesh Armor with the Infiltrate skill. We got another Palanite Sergeant with a Combat Shotgun, a Shock Stave, Mesh Armor, and Infiltrate again. Then we got 3 Patrolmen, one of them with a Combat Shotgun, Stub Gun, Mesh, and then 2 of them very cheap, just with Photon Flash Grenades and Stub Guns. And then finally, we've got a Flail and Stub Gun wielding Scum. And this comes to 995 credits total. So the idea behind this one is that your 2 Infiltrate Sergeants are going to deploy somewhere on a flank together. And then they're going to move up and they're going to use those double templates to take the enemy out of action. And then hopefully your shield and armor are going to protect you from retaliation. Yeah, as I mentioned before in the loadout suggestions section of the video, the idea behind the assault shield is that not only it gives you more armor save, but hopefully the knockback means that you can knock people out of combat should you find yourself in close combat, and then hopefully you can web gun them now that they are no longer engaged with you. And then the second sergeant has got the shock stave for versatile, so you know he can hang out behind the other guy and zap people that get too close. And then meanwhile the subjugator captain with teamwork, yeah, he moves up with the combat shotgun patrolman, and then the 2 guys are the flash grenades. And then the flash grenades will, you know, flashbang someone, and then you go in with the shotgun and the shock stave and you take them down. And then the scum's just hanging out with the flail, doing a bit of support work for the captain. I wrote subjugator captain for this one, and that's because I used the same template as the previous video and forgot to change it. So yeah, with that said, let's go on to the next list. And for this one, I'm calling it the Lawful Lead Gang. The idea behind it is that you are putting down the law via the medium of huge amounts of bullets. So for this one, we've got a Palanite Captain who's got a bolt gun, stub gun, mesh armor, and fast shot. We got a Palanite Sergeant who's got heavy stubber, stub gun, mesh armor, and infiltrate. A second sergeant who's got a sniper rifle, mesh, and overwatch. Then we got 2 patrolmen who've got bolt guns and stub guns. A nice cheap third patrolman who's just got an auto gun. Then we got 3 scum with reclaimed auto guns. And last one's got smoke grenades just because I had a few extra credits kicking about. So yeah, the idea behind this is just everyone's got as much DACA as they can. The sniper rifle overwatch guy is there to dissuade people from poking their heads out. The heavy stubber has got infiltrate. You don't want to deploy too far forwards, but hopefully you can deploy somewhere with a good line of sight, like up a tower or, you know, facing down a nice corridor or something like that. The captain has got fast shot on the bolt gun, so hopefully he can get double the bolt gun action in that. And then, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of auto guns. Excellent stuff. Just a whole lot of DACA for that one. And then finally, we've got my personal starting gang. Yeah. So this is not like my secret high-level tactics gang. This isn't like the list that I think will be the most efficient. This is just the list that I think would be the most fun to play for me personally. And this is a combination of things that I want to try on the table in terms of loadouts and models that I just happen to own and think look cool. So yeah, I'm going to start with the Palanite Captain, who's got Plasma Pistol, Paramore, Mesh, and Got Your Six. A Sergeant with a Web Gun, Stub Gun, Mesh Armor, and Hip Shooting, so he can do the old double move template shenanigans, which I think is very nice. We got a Sergeant with a Concussion Carbine, Stub Gun, Mesh, and Overwatch. Overwatch with a blast weapon is always hilarious. We got 2 Palanite Patrolmen with bolt guns. No stub gun because I was really tight on credits, but getting those 2 stub guns as soon as possible is probably smart. We got a Patrolman with a combat shotgun and stub gun. And then we got a Scum with a las gun and a second Scum with a reclaimed auto gun. That's partly because I don't like using the same loadout too many times. So, you know, las gun and auto gun, totally different. And partly because the reclaimed version is mildly cheaper and therefore saved me 5 credits. And yeah, that is my personal starting gang if I was going to start out with a Badzone list. And yeah, remember to stay Badzoned. So I don't know whether it came across in the video. If you watched my previous basic Palanite video, I only gave you 2 example gang lists for that one. And that's because honestly, the basic Palanites don't really do it for me. They're not really, the list doesn't really make me fire up the old brain juices. They don't get me super excited to play around with different ideas. But Badzones, on the other hand, I think they're a lot more fun, just a lot more flexible, and lots of cool stuff you can do with, you know, Scum, and different loadouts and different weapons on your dudes, and obviously the old wearing a cape, running around in the sewers look is very cool as well. Yeah, I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching to the end. Yeah, if you want to stick around and watch some more NECROMUNDA stuff, please subscribe and have a look at me playlists and all that kind of thing. Leave me a comment if you liked it. If you have any questions or anything I missed out, yeah, ask me and I'll try and help you out to the best of my ability. And yeah, thanks a lot and see you next time. Bye!